Mswati inkosi ithula akayithathe akahambe nayo akayithathe yedenza bakhe
Right, it's 6 a.m. Central African time. A very good morning to you and welcome to the program. We begin this week on the 30th of March. This is the last Monday of the month of March as we march into the month of April. Tomorrow is going to be the last day of the month. God has been great, and indeed we come from a weekend with which we have been praising the Lord. And from that weekend, you can certainly tell that the Easter spirit is in the air. I'm just relaying the sentiments from my church and the beautiful spirit that is happening there. And I know that it is permeating across the churches around the country. The national service will be there as it was officially announced through the right channels and certainly here on Eswatini TV. And we hope Eswatini are gearing up for a beautiful and blessed Easter weekend, as well as services, and that their spirits shall be fulfilled. And speaking of fulfilled, we start this weekend on a bit of a bleak sense of optimism, particularly around the stories around the energy shock tariff increases, and that is both in electricity here at home. Of course, we saw that the 13.61% tariff increase that is set to taking effect rather on the 1st of April, meaning you only have one last day before that increase is officially in effect. That pass officially came through this past week, and a lot of conversation around what that means for your pockets, what that means for households and as well as businesses around the country. But a bit of relief considering the number being slashed from the previous proposal by Esera. And Eswatini, some are celebrating that the number has been slashed quite significantly, but some are saying it is still an increase, and what 100 emalangeni gets you now is not so motivating. So we are going to have that conversation with our economist, Sanele Sbia, at 6:30 a.m. as to, how that has implications, particularly for your own pockets. But also another energy question is, of course, the implications of the ongoing global conflicts. Conversations, especially around Mbabane yesterday, where that only one gas station had fuel. And it is a matter of concern because it is not only a Mbabane story, it is a national story as well as a regional story, because in South Africa, prices are set to increase, fuel prices are set to increase in the next week. And of course, we know that when they increase that side, chances are it is going to be the same case here at home in a few days after that increase in South Africa. So the implications of the war when it comes to energy and particularly gas prices, another big conversation in the backdrop of this economic time where everyone is complaining about salaries and complaining about the cost of living. What does that mean? Sanele Sbia chimes in again at 6:30 a.m. At 7:30, you'll remember that the National Sports Awards took place last week, and one of the big winners was our own in-house sports journalist Patizwe Msibi. We do want to take a short moment to celebrate that, and hopefully he does come with his award and we look at that. But what that also signals for local media, especially in the sports sector in Eswatini, as well as the excellence really with which these journalists are continuing to practice and portray. across the different fields with which they report about sports. We are going to start to have a conversation around even Kusile Breakfast Show being considered there, because we have had so many people excited about, these segments that we always have around sports. Maybe we do deserve some recognition. What do you think? Anyway, moving along, we do also want to speak about the Easter fixture. That is the MTN Premier League. That is the local league in Eswatini. The fixtures are out, and some really, really interesting encounters that we shall enjoy in these fixtures. Of course, Moneni Pirate against Nsingizini looks like is going to be a defining fixture there, coupled with the many other games. Bobane Highlanders are also in action, so we do want to get into that conversation. Otherwise, it's a good morning. It's 4 minutes after 6. Let's look at this morning we'll look at the Eswatini Observer and see what headlines they have for us. Let's look at the front page first. And here are our top stories, the Eswatini Observer Monday morning edition. King hailed for 255 million Emalangeni OACPS funds rescue. His Majesty King Mswati III applauds at the closing session of the 11th OACP Summit of Heads of State and Government held in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. His Majesty was praised for his leadership as a resource mobilization champion for the organization. Moving along, pupils expelled for same-sex relations. Decision made after a vote by a majority of parents, and pupils must go back to school according to the regional education officer. Another story speaks to government that has moved to scrap school fees. And another story is, we signed Google agreement. That is a sentiment from Minister for ICT, Honorable Savannah Mazia. The back end of this publication now. The sports story, Samora puts his money where his mouth is. Sihlangu's big money motivation. EFA president confirms increased financial incentives beyond standard bonus for comeback win. He warns that early exit would be historic embarrassment for country, and Eritrea arrive ahead of the second leg. Oh yeah, by the way, that is another conversation that we are having with Patizwe this morning, as Sihlangu Semnigati is set to try to reclaim glory as they head into this second leg of this big match against Eritrea. Remember, they lost the first one, and they ought to win the second one. Nomcebo reigns supreme at her Move tournament. Veteran strategist Nomcebo Sibisi staged a masterclass in resilience this past weekend, overcoming an early setback to clinch the Trojan Horse Hair Move Chess Tournament title. Congratulations to her. Tudo leaves Tottenham, and coaches back Sihlangu to secure AFCON qualification. Yeah, we certainly hope they can win. Otherwise, we will be mad. Anyway, let's go for a net break. We have our news in vernacular when we return. Good morning.
Those that are in pain must forget all the problems they have. Because the things of the earth have got no answer. But the answer that we have is all the morning. When I'm preaching here, I'm preaching to myself. I receive the Holy Spirit.
I declare that a turnaround is coming my way.
Turnaround is coming in my life.
Ubukele Kusile breakfast show uhlelo lakho lolithandza kakhulu sibuko semaswati Eswatini TV tindzaba teSwati. Buciko bengwenyama kutebholi sebufukule inhlangano yemave yase-Africa netihlenge tase-Caribbean nase-Pacific i-Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States ngemali lengetulu kwa-200 million emalangeni. Le mali icokelelwe ingwenyama kumave langemalunga alenhlangano ngesikhathi kuvulwa umhlangano wayo wel-11 webaholi kanye nabohulumende eSipopo Conference Center evenile Equatorial Guinea. Ngwenyama icokelele letimali esigabeni sayo sekuba ngumholi lobuke luhlangothi lwekucokelela timali nalolunye lusito loludzingekile kutekele lenhlangano ifeze imigomo yayo.
Umsebenzi londiwe ingwenyama utakulule lenhlangano lebeseyilengela eweni ngenxa yebulukhuni etimaleni. Lo mhlangano wel-11 lohambisane nekugujwa kwama-50 eminyaka yasungulwa lenhlangano uhlanganise abaholi bemave langemalunga ayo labateketa indzaba letiphatselene nelikusasa lalenhlangano lenemave langemalunga langama-75 nebantfu labangu-1.2 billion. Noma abaholi babukusana etindlela tekutfutfukisa lenhlangano kute ifeze imigomo yayo bebayicondzisisa indzaba yekuthi ibhekene netinsaya letinkhulu etimaleni lokungamakela nekuthi angafezeki emaphupho ayo. Ngesikhathi ingwenyama icelwa ukuthi ibe ngumholi lobuka indzaba tekucokelela timali nalolunye lusito lokuqhuba tinhlelo talenhlangano, ikhansela lenhlangano ingene itse shice etikweletini. Ngeminyaka wa-2025 kumave yalenhlangano langama-74 abengama-48 kuphela lathembekile ekukhokheni imali yebulunga lekhishwa njalo ngeminyaka, lokuphawula ukuthi emave langu-40% apholotile. Ingwenyama-ke ifike yasukumisa luhlelo lobe liqukethe tinguquko letiphatsekako letibukete indlela lesebenta ngayo lenhlangano. Umphumela loku ufake ekhatsi kutsi tikweleti tayo lebetifika emalini lengu-12 million wama-euro tehle tifike ku-9 million wama-euro. Kwatsi nemave lebekakweleta imali yebulunga ahlobisa kuloko bekakweleta. Ingakavulele emave kutsi amemetele timali latetsembisile ingwenyama, iwakhuzate kutsi ayithathele etulu indzaba yekutimela kwalenhlangano yetimaleni ngobe loku kutawucinisekisa kutsi lenhlangano iba nelikusasa leliqhakazile.
Your Excellencies, now that we have seen the brief history of the organization and its importance to member states, we cannot overlook the fact that our summit is held at a defining moment. The question of the resource mobilization is not merely technical. It is profoundly political. It goes to the heart of our collective aspirations for economic sovereignty. Without sustainable, predictable, and self-directed financing, our development priorities remain vulnerable to external pressures and global uncertainties. A financial sound and self-sustainable organization gives credibility and confidence not only to member states, but existing stakeholders and potential partners. Resource mobilization is therefore a fundamental condition for asserting our independence and shaping our own development trajectory. Charity begins at home.
Ingwenyama imemetele kutsi live leSwatini litibophelela kuhlanyela imali lengu-3 million euros kuvusetela lenhlangano.
As the champion of resource mobilization, the Kingdom of Eswatini is pleased to lead by example by contributing a sum of 1.5 million euros to support the work of the OSCPs.
Bangakamemeteli imali labayihlanyile baholi badumise buholi bengwenyama lesebuletse kukhanya lokusha kulenhlangano. Mengameli Equatorial Guinea Obiang Nguema Mbasoko uvule inkhundla wetsembisa kutsi live lakhe litawuhlanyela 5 million wama-dollars emelika. Live le-Angola lithembise 3 million euros, iMozambique yahlanyela $1 million, iTanzania nayo-ke yahlanyela $1 million, noko yethembisa ukuthi kutawuthi uphela umhlangano ibe seyengedile imali. Lamanye emave yamemetela ukuthi tinguquko lethunyiswe iNgwenyama tiwakhuthate ukuthi abhadale imali lebekayikweleta. Kwathi emave lafake ekhatsi iComoros, Cote d'Ivoire, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Gabon, Jamaica neBahamas abika ukuthi asetawunguthulisa kodwa utawuthi uphela umhlangano abese katimemetele timali latatuhlanyela kule nhlangano. iNgwenyama beyitibekele ukuthi elangeni lekuvulwa kwalo mhlangano kucokelelwe lokungenani 9 million euros. Kodwa silo semhlaba siyishaye ngalokuphindza-phindziwe inkoyoyo sacokelela 12.8 million euros, lokuyimali lelingalinganiselwa ku-246 million emalangeni.
We were looking for at least 9 million euros, and we have managed to work very well. We have managed to raise at least up to date the mathematics they've done, which comes to 12.8 million euros. That's what we've raised today. So this amount of money will surely go a very long way. There's no structure that can operate without financing. Any structure needs to be given credibility, and we have partners who are always looking at all of us that since we've created structures, are we committing ourselves any kind of commitment, and if there is lack of commitment, they too will not have enough confidence.
Akulokunye usaqhubeka umhlangano umengameli wase-Angola wendlulisele ematomu ekuba inhloko yale nhlangano umengameli wase-Equatorial Guinea. Baholi balamave lamabili baphindze bahlonishwa ngetindondo kulandzela kuhlabana kwabo ebuholeni bale nhlangano etigabeni letahlukahlukene. Bekubhekeke ukuthi emave yaqhubeke nekuthembisa timali letitawufukula le nhlangano kute ibuyelwe nasitfundisayo njengekufisa kweNgwenyama. Bika kwetindzabeni ngisandile Makhanya naThemba Mamba eSipopo Conference Center e-Equatorial Guinea.
Sawufike emaphethelweni umhlangano welishumi nakunye wenhlangano yamave ase-Afrika nasetihlengeni tase-Caribbean nase-Pacific lebekade ubanjelwe eveni le-Equatorial Guinea ungenelwe yiNgwenyama. Baholi bathembise kubambisa iNgwenyama emsebentini lewucalile wekucatulula tinsaya letibhekene naletinhlangano kuteta imali. Baphindze-ke batibophelela ukuthi batawubambisana bacinise tebuholi kule nhlangano. iNgwenyama ingenele kuvalwa kwalo mhlangano isingethwe indvuna yetangephandle kanye nekubambisana nalamanye emave umhlonishwa Pholile Shakhantu.
Ngesikhathi uvalwa lo mhlangano luthathe emalanga lamathathu baholi bemave langephasi kwale nhlangano baphakamise ivumelwano letihlose kuphakamisa kusebenta kwayo nekuqinisekisa ukuthi ihamba ngemgomo wayo lomkhulu ekubona emave langephasi kwayo lange-75 azuza intuthuko le-Kusile. Kulo mhlangano iNgwenyama iqophe umlando ngesikhathi ihola luhlelo lekucokelela timali tekusekela le nhlangano lebhekene nebulukhuni elihlangothini lwetimali. Baholi labafake ekhatsi mengameli wase-Equatorial Guinea lophindze abe ngusihlalo wale nhlangano Obiang Nguema Mbasoko bathumise iNgwenyama ngekumukela sicelo sekuba ngilobukela uhlangothi lekucokelela timali kule nhlangano bancoma-ke kutibophelela nebuholo bayo lobukhaliphile lobucatulule tinsaya tale nhlangano elihlangothini lwetimali. Baholi bemave bethembisa ukuthi batawenta konke lokusemandleni kusekela iNgwenyama isaqathulisa le nhlangano yetimalini ngenhloso yokuyikhulisa igcine seyifike esigabeni sekutimela ngalokuphelele. Kuvunyelwene nokuthi liqiniso lihlelo lolaqala live leSwatini lokuqinisa kuthuthukisa nekuhlela kabusha tebuholi kule nhlangano ngenhloso yokuqinisa buqotho kusebentela ebaleni kutimela etimalini nanekuthi kube lisiko kulabasebenta kiyo kusebenta ngekutikhandla nekulwela imiphumela lebonakalako kuhambisana nemazinga ebuholi lobuvelele emhlaba wonke. Lokhu kugcizelelwe nangusihlalo lomusha mengameli Obiang Nguema Mbasoko.
Excellencies, history will judge our ability to transform this organization and adapt it to changing times. We must act with vision unity and determination to ensure that the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States remains a useful instrument in the service of the development, prosperity, and dignity of our peoples. In this regard, in my capacity as President of the 11th Summit, I undertake the commitment to accompany and lead, together with all member states, this process of transformation and renewal of the OSCPS.
Baholi babuye bateka nendzaba yekubambisana kwalenhlangano kanye nenhlangano ye-European Union bayayivuma indzaba yekutsi tinkinga lebetikhona kulenhlangano tibutsekamethile ebudlelwane baletinhlangano letimbili. Bancome kutsi kundlalelwa netihlanzi kukhulunyiswane kubuye kuthembana kute sitawugcina sifezekile nezivumelwano se-Samoa Agreement. Baholi bagcizelele indzaba yekutsi emavela ngephasi kwalenhlangano yasimame kutekuthula netekuphepha baveta nekukhatsateka kwabo ngetigigaba tephekula sikhuni letinyabeta lamanye emavela ngemalunga alenhlangano. Baholi babophe lifindvo kabusha nasetindzabeni tekucinisa tekutsengiselana. Kuvunyelwene kutsi kubambisana ngilona khambi lelingeta kutsi tonke tinsaya letikhungatsele lenhlangano tincibilike njengemthwebeba eceleni kwemlilo. Bebika kwetindzabeni ngisandile Makhanya naThemba Mamba eSipopo Conference Center e-Equatorial Guinea.
Akuphele kutsi nya kucwaya nekubandlulula abantu labagulako kuleli. Loku kuvetwe indvuna yetempilo umhlonishwa Mduduzi Mathebula ngesikhatsi livela kaNgwane limtsibi munye nalamanye emave emhlaba ekugubheni lusuku lwesifo sesifuba sengati emhlabeni. Lomsebenzi ubanjelwe enkhundleni yaseNgwene ngemcibelo.
Live laseswatini lingulelinye lemave langu-30 emhlabeni lahamba embili ngesibalo lesisetulu sebantu labatholakala ukuthi banesifo sesifuba sengati i-TB. Akhuluma emcimbini wokugubha lusuku lwesifo sesifuba sengati emhlabeni obelibanjelwe enkhundleni yaseNgwene. Sihlalo libandla lemalunga ePhalamende labuka isifo se-TB sabelomthetho. Ucele sive ukuthi sisekelane uma ngabe kukhona losatholakele ukuthi unalesifo.
Ngicela nje kakhulu ukuthi imizaba ye-TB yethu sonke nayethu sonke bekunene wonke ngilo nalo akazame usinaka emtholampilo afike acele ukuthi abamhlole naye ukuthi lokhu udeni le-TB i-TB iyalapheka bekunene.
Lolunye ihlangosi lolubambisa sive etindzabeni te-TB bagcugcuteli kanti ke uhulumende uyabobona bumcoka babo.
Bagcugcuteli angibabongele nabo lokuthi ingwenyama ibabulayele indvuna lefana nemhlonishwa Mathebula ecabinet indzaba lehamba embili kulamalanga etikweni letempilo ifaka ekhatsi tindzaba tebagcugcuteli. Indvuna ifikile ecabinet yateka tindzaba tekuthi lembasha ebagcugcuteli seyincane kulamalanga nje indvuna isebenta loko futhi ngiyathi lokuthi ngeke bengemalanga amangaki itabe indvuna seyivele icedzile indzaba leyo kuthi bagcunabo batfole insipho letabakhutsata ukuthi bakhone kusebenta emangweni sasekudumise Mathebula kuleyo initiative leyo mhlonishwa.
Indvuna yetempilo umhlonishwa Mduduzi Mathebula ithi awuphele uthi nya umkhuba lomubi wekuchwinisa abantu labane kugula lokutsite lokufaka khatsi sifo sesifuba sengati.
Nekucwayana ke nasesigula siyacela ukuthi sihambele kakhashane nekucwayana ukuze sitokhona ukuthi nawugula ungakufihli ukugula ngoba nasicwayana abantu bese bayisaba nekusho ukuthi bayagula. Sithi ke akuphele ekucwayana sikhumbule ukuthi nakugula lomunye nawe ungagula.
Lonyaka lolusuku lugujwa ngephansi kwesicubulo lesithi yebo sithi ayincoba i-TB. Kubika lengithini kule ngiseNgwene.
Lobekamelele indvuna elitiko letekuvakasha umhlonishwa Jane Mkhonda lekunguye ke lobambe kuba ngumabhalane lomkhulu kuleli tiko Duduzi lenhlengethwa emkhankasweni wamahamba coach hiking. Uthi sive asigweme tonke etinhlobo tekuhlukubetana nguloyo akatitsanze endlule yatsanze namakhelwane wakhe ngaleyo ndlela sitawuba sive lesinelutsandvo lengeke sihlukubetane.
Tindimbane tesive lesilinganiselwe enkulungwane ninye nemakhulu lasihlanu ngelisonto ekuseni isingenele umkhankaso wecanca indzaba yakumahamba losewubanjwe iminyaka leli-12 ngaphansi sesicubulo lesithi Every Step Counts, #hiking for GBV awareness and digital safety. Lomele indvuna ilitiko letekuvakasha lokungilobahamba ekubanga mabhalane lomkhulu kuleli tiko Duduzile Nhlengethwa uthi lo mkhankaso wemahamba coach hiking umgcoka itiko letekuvakasha ngoba uhlanganisa tinhlangothi letimbili taleli tiko lekuhlangothi lwetekuvakasha kanye nemvelo.
Kulapho khona sibona khona imvelo yethu ingule yakha lithuba ukuthi kube netindzaba tekuvakasha kuphindze kube netindzaba letisapota letinye tinhlelo tentuthuko lekufaka ekhatsi ukuthi ngilapho sikhona khona ukuthi sishukumise umtimba sibe sivele siphilile. Endzabeni ke temvelo siyayibona inthaba yethu yakumahamba inthaba lenhle leseyibambile yona indzaba yetemvelo lenakekelekile. Siyathemba ukuthi simaswati sitawuchubeka siyinakekele yona naletinye tindzawo tetfu letinhle temvelo lesinato. Lekuba ngilapho ke singakhona ukuthi sikhange tivakashi nathi nje simaswati sikhone ukuthi singangcebeleka khona sishaywe ngumoya. Tonke tinhlobo tekuhlukubeta noma nguleto leti gender based noma nguleto leti cyber based nako konke nje kuhlukubeta lokuba khona lokufaka ekhathini lekuhlukubeta imvelo ngekuyinyukubeta sicela ukuthi sikugweme. Kumele umuntu atithandze yena athandze namakhelwane wakhe nasithandzene angeke sihlukubetane.
Umphathisifundza ayishiselweni umhlonishwa Themba Masuku uthi lokwende sifana isicubulo semahamba coach hiking salonyaka leleso seminyaka lophelile lesolo sibuke kulo nekuhlukubetana ngetebulili kwetama kushumayela livangeli lelithi asiphele nyasi ihlava sekuhlukubetana.
Lo msebenzi lona initiative yokukhangisa ngelishiselo wokuthuthukisa inhlalakahle eshiselweni yokuthuthukisa umnotho eshiselweni ithuthukisa netekuconza understand tindzaba tekubusa ukuthi live libuswa njani. So konke kwenteka la kule initiative lena ngeke sithuthuke nangabe kukhona budlova lobentekako eveni kufuneka sikwehlise lo budlova. Ngakho ke sitawusukuma sonke sibehlise lapha nje nakuhanjwa lapha etulo entsabeni kule hiking bantu bayakhuluma tindzaba letehlukene kepha utawukhanza ukuthi lokuningi labatakukhuluma ngunaku lesingako la namhla sikepha singayenta njani le gender based violence. Bantu balwa ngoba kwentekeni, bantu banyanyana ngoba kunjani. Ibe live letama ngayo yonke indlela ukuthi bantu bevane babenzawanye. So lamhla imcoka kakhulu lena uba sikhuluma ngaloko sicabanga ukuthi kutasithuthukisa.
Njalo ngeminyaka imali legolekwa kulomkhankaso wemahamba coach hiking ibese isetshenziswa kunaka labatsingile kekubatsengela kudla nekuhlangabetana naletinye titsongo labanato kanti lebeswele baphindze bakhelwe tindlu. Kubika Thando Kuhle Mdluli, Mahamba.
Kugujwa kweli-hour lemhlaba lekucisha gesi ngenhloso yekonga gesi kanye nekunakekela imvelo kuniketa wonke umuntu incabhayi kuba neligalelo ekongeni yona imvelo. Kuteka umhlaba utaba indzawo lephephile kuphila kwebantu baphile impilo lekhonsako. Laba ngemavi endvuna elitiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla umvane Nkosi lonkokhela lowethuleke emcimbini wekugubha leli-hour lebewubanjelwe emalandelas eMalkens. Indvuna beyimelelwe ngumcondzisi wetemandla kuleli tiko Thabile Nkosi.
Leli hour leligujwa njalo ngemgcibelo wekugcina enyangeni yendlovu lenkulu emhlabeni ligujwe ngaphansi kwesicubulo lesithi The Biggest Hour for Earth lokuchaza ubumcoka balo emhlabeni. Kuthena kugabanca insimbi yesiphohlongo kusihlwa wavela wacishwa gesi kwakhanyiswa tibane letisebentisa gesi welilanga.
Climate science reminds us of the agency before us. Rising temperatures, erratic rainfall, and extreme weather events. These are not distant threats. They affect our livelihoods.
Lobeka melele indvuna yetemcebo waphansi nemandla kulomsebenzi Thabile Nkosi uthi kugucuka kwesimo selitulu kusikhumbuta ngebumcoka bekuthi kufanele sikufake kuto tonke tinhlelo kulwa nako njengoba lezinga lekushisa selo lenyuke njalo timvula letihambisana nesiphepho nato tisishaya njalo lekugcina kulimate takhiwo lesinato kuthikameteke tekulima kanye nemnotho. Lo melele inhlangano yakamhlabuhlangene yetentuthuko i-UNDP kuleli, Hendrik Franklin, uthi lokugujwa kwaleli awa kusikhumbuto kumuntu ngamunye nangamunye kuthi konke lesikwentako kufanele kungayinyukubeti imvelo. Uthina hulumende kanye netinkampani kufanele tibe nemigomo lecinile yokuvikela imvelo. Uthi kuyathokodisa nekuthi emabhange asayatisekela tinhlelo tekukhicita gesi lohlobile.
This moment also presents opportunities to rethink how we produce and use energy, to accelerate innovation, expand clean technologies, and build more resilient power systems.
Umphathi wenkampani temagesi kuleli Ernest Mkhonda uthi kumcoka ukuthi tinkampani ticabangisise tindlela letikhonsako tekukhicita gesi ngekusebentisa tebuciko lobunganyukubeti imvelo. Uthi leSwatini liyachubeka nekulandzela tindlela letibekwe ngumhlaba tekukhicita gesi kanye nemandla lahlobile njengoba litibekele kutsi lokungenani likhicite lokunguhafu wagesi walo ngetindlela letinganyukubeti imvelo ngeminyaka wa 2030. Tikhulumi letihlukene kulomcimbi tichaze kabanti ngemisebenti letiyentako ekucinisekiseni kutsi live likhicita emandla lahlobile. Kubika Mbongwa Dube eMalkens.
Kutemidlalo mengameli wemhlangano yemidlalo wesibhakela Webster Lukhele uthi kuyasita ukuthi bahle badlala nalamanye amave lokubasita ukubuka ukuthi ngabe vele lo mdlalo bayakhula yini noma seloku bemenza wonye. Lukhele bekakhuluma nakudlala imidlalo ye-President's Cup lebekade ibanjelwe nalikhethelo lese-Mozambique kamanzini.
Ngifuna abatodlala nema-champions ethu njengaloku 2 weeks back besibambe ama-national championships and I won't lie, Mozambique it's very good and I think live lethu litholile le experience lelithi ngako naloku kusadlalwa but nje uyatibonela nawe lizinga lisetulu kakhulu kuyasita kakhulu lokudlala nebangaphandle because masodwa sike sicabanga ukuthi lizinga lisetulu kanzi kumbe sisadzinga ku-improve kunengi lokusadzinga kwendiwa njengaloku nibonile lena it's an annual tournament letaba khona mnyaka wonke angisho nje kuthi kulo mnyaka lotako want to make it bigger mangingaphosisi nje ngicabanga ukuthi emave ataba mathathu sekaconfirmile even for next year because babonile lokuthi cishe yinvo lesezingende lesetulu engage la midlalo baya improve and kuyakhona ukuthi noma ngabe sebayaphuma bayodlala ngaphandle sebajwayele ukudlala nabantu bangaphandle and especially lama podium finishers lawo because that was my key objective.
Lobuke kusebenza kwabonombembe kuleli sifiso zondo uthi kukhala kwemacembu ngabonombembe bayakuva kungako ke kunemetamo labayendako kutama kulungisa lapho kubonakala ngathi akuhambi kahle khona. Zondo bekakhuluma elangeni lokuhlolwa kwabonombembe ukuthi balungele kangakanani ukudlalisa imidlalo esimeni semtimba i-fitness test lebeubanjelwe emavuso kamanzini.
Bonombembe labadlalisa imidlalo ngaphansi kwe-Premier League bebanelilanga ke lapho bahlolwa khona ukuthi ngabe esimeni semtimba balungele kangakanani ukudlalisa yona imidlalo yaka-Premier League i-physical fitness test. Kulo msebenzi lobuke kusebenza kwabonombembe kuleli sifiso zondo uthi banazo tinhlelo letizama ukulungisa tikhalo temacembu la abe nato ngabonombembe.
Kunengi lokwentakalayo umsakadini nangasho nje sekucaleni nawo sobuka ngema-games nekuphaphuleka kwesive mhlawumbe ngala in refereeing kuba ne-first feedback leba khona just after the game with the assessor and the referee then bese kuba ne-review leyentiwa i-referees committee with the refereeing panel ibuke the performance is based on the indication laba lekhona bese then ithatha ama-step ukuthi what need to be done nakhona labadzinga improve khona what need to be recommended lapho bente kahle khona kuye kwenteke nje nangasho nje ithi recent kube na 2 workshop kube na workshop lebekhona mhla ka-22 kwaba ne-workshop lebekhona 28 kamanzini e-Caritas. Still those were the recommendation labekavela on the report yama-assessor nothi we need to work on this one, we need to correct this one.
Kubonombembe babengamashumi lamabili nesikhombisa labangenelelo lihlelo kwaba-ke munye longaphumeleli kulabo labangakaphumeleli bayeke banikedwe amaviki lasithupha kulungiswa bese-ke bayahamba bayohlolwa kabusha. Lobekele umsakazo we-Eswatini TV temdlalo ngiphathiswe Msiba nabonke Dlamini kaManzini.
Sitephetha kanjalo ndzaba futhi Eswati sita uchubeka nelihlelo sicocisane nasomnotho sanele Sibiya masibuya emakethe.
To all the viewers of Eswatini TV in the kingdom and beyond. Eswatini TV is regulated by the Eswatini Communications Commission through the Broadcasting Code and Broadcasting Guidelines. Under these instruments, the station commits to broadcasting information and news that have been fact-checked, programs and content in respectful language with no elements of hate speech, violence or sexual activity. If you hear any unsuitable content on this channel, you have a right to voice your complaints with the station management. Should you not be satisfied with the response or action taken, you can escalate your matter to the Communications Commission at PO Box 7811 Babani. Call 2406 7000 or send an email to info@esccom.org.za. For more information, visit www.esccom.org.za.
Lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi
aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokusemndeni.
All right, good morning again and welcome to the program as we continue to engage with the people that matter. Now we want to get into a conversation around Eswatini entering a period of rising energy costs with a 13.61% electricity tariff increase set to take effect in April, even as global oil and gas prices surge amid escalating conflict involving Iran. And while all of these may seem like separate developments, they are all converging into one economic reality: that higher costs for households, pressure on businesses, and renewed questions about our energy dependence. To help us now unpack what this means in real terms, I'm joined by our economist, Sanele Sibiya, who joins us virtually this morning. Very good morning to you, Mr. Sibiya. Thank you for making time. Maybe let's set the stage and look at it from a face value. We have a local electricity tariff increase as well as a geopolitical conflict in the Middle East. Maybe how do these two stories connect economically, especially for our small kingdom?
Thank you, Mr. Nxumalo. Good morning to you and also good morning to the viewers. This story, Mr. Nxumalo, is one of cost of living, because when you look at what is happening in the electricity front, is we're seeing this 13% increase in electricity, and we know that's going to play into the cost of living, as electricity is the backbone of every production process in the kingdom. And also, if you look at the price of fuel again, just like electricity is also a part of every production process. So what we are seeing here, Nxumalo, is there is going to be that 13% increase, which will have to be passed into the consumers. So it's going to come directly to your electricity costs, and then also through the commodities that you buy, which utilize electricity as part of that production process. So we do know that producers are going to pass a portion of that through to you, and then also, as we see more pressures coming through from these geopolitical tensions, again we are going to see that a few are being passed on to you as a consumer, and also because businesses will also have to be dealing with that at the same time, and also in terms of the transportation, of oil and commodities. Also, those prices are now on the upward trajectory due to this conflict in the Middle East, and largely the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. So we are expecting that to also influence inflation in the next coming months. And, we should be grateful to His Majesty's government for the 100 million this year, which has actually gone into the subsidy as for electricity. So somehow it does cushion consumers from what is yet to come.
The tariff reality, the regulator there has approved, of course, a 13.61% increase to be exact, and that is perhaps lower than what was requested, but pretty much still significant. From where you stand economically, how should we really understand this particular increase? Is it a cost-reflective adjustment or a sign of deeper structural issues in our energy model?
As it were, Mr. Nxumalo, it is a cost-reflective adjustment. Remember last year we had right about the same conversation around where we had the utilities companies requesting a double-digit increase, and government actually offered a single-digit increase without any financial support. But this time around, we're seeing the number coming down by some 5-6%. And there is this financial support. So what has happened this time around is government didn't just come and say, you're not going to increase by this much. But what you're going to do is we are going to give you a portion of money to spend to help you lower those costs. So yes, it is cost reflective, but yeah, the costs are driven by the structure, Mr. Nxumalo, in the sense that we are importing quite a lot of energy from outside the country. So there are those, those cross-border influences that we then also have to deal with as a country. And then over and above, we've had to deal with issues of a prolonged drought last year, and that did actually affect the production of energy. So it's a mix of both, Mr. Nxumalo, from where I stand.
And then imported inflation, as well as the Iran war, we are now seeing oil prices surge past $110 a barrel, and gas markets tightening globally because of the conflict involving Iran. How quickly and how directly do these global energy shocks transmit into the Eswatini economy? I mean, we've already seen the growing conversation in South Africa that by next week they should be seeing significant increases in their oil prices, and certainly something that we then expect to happen here at home. And the reality is, this past weekend there were issues of unavailability of gas in a lot of petrol stations in Eswatini.
Yeah, so I think we are somewhat cushioned by the fact that our fuel markets are somehow regulated, and we have to wait for the Energy Committee to meet and decide the price, right? But if it wasn't for that, Mr. Nxumalo, I think by now we would have seen about 2 or 3 adjustments in pump prices, just to remedy the situation, and the fact that we've seen the prices of fuel going up. So this is a story that we're seeing across Europe, the US, and Asia, where the markets markets instantaneously adjust to the forces of demand and supply, and the price of inputs there is a very critical component of that. So right now, what we've been seeing in terms of those oil markets, Numalo, is on average, when we track these numbers on average here on Eswatini TV, just the past couple of weeks, we saw that we're averaging around 63 to 65 dollars per barrel, and then that number just shot drastically to above 100 on average, or the upper 90s. So you do expect that to hit markets quite swiftly. And then also, Numalo, it's not just about the energy in itself. What this war has done is it has also made, the price of maritime shipping and the price of jet fuel are very expensive. So all modes of transportation right now have become very expensive. So what that means is it is not only going to be a direct impact on the oil price, which is going to have to affect the cost of living, but also the cost of imports, Mrs. Numano. Remember, we need commodities to move from China, the US, into Eswatini, the ones that we import, right? And now those goods are going to be moving at a higher maritime or shipping cost, or at a higher freight cost. And that in itself is also going to be transmitted into the price. So what we should be seeing and bracing for, Mr. Numalo, in the next months is not just an increase in the price of fuel, but also an increase in the price of the commodities that we are importing. And also what we've seen happen, Numalo, is we've moved from that higher 16 region in the dollar lilangeni exchange rate to back in the 17. I think at some point we were edging closer to the 15 mark, but now we're getting back to those 17, and it seems we are moving back to that 18. Again, that makes our imports very expensive because we have to pay for them with a malangeni. So we are just waiting to see, and we know this coming month, April, we are going to see a barrage of those coming into the inflation story. We know that the electricity is going to come in. We know the fuel prices definitely is going to have to adjust upwards in April. And then also, as we get more commodities coming in, we are now going to also be seeing that impact coming into the inflation story.
Yeah, of course, the gas availability concerns that, there are already conversations locally around gas availability and rising LPG prices based on global trends. Is this a legitimate supply concern that we should be preparing for, or is the bigger issue price volatility? Particularly in that story, what is the story?
It's more an issue of volatility, Ngumalo, because if you look at our sources where we source most of our gases, we do get a bit of our gas coming through from the Middle East, but most of it is actually from within Africa. But what we have to understand is these commodities, Ngumalo, are priced in they are priced in dollars, and there is a global standard that is followed. And once we start seeing that price volatility, and where we see that cartel of Organization for Oil and Petroleum Producing Countries, the OPEC cartel, shifting towards a certain direction, it tends then to also affect the markets. And remember that when we're talking of energy markets, Ngumalo, we are talking of a futures market. So right now, with every supplier, with what is happening in terms of the Europe story, so everyone wants to send their gas there because that's where it makes more money, right? And that's a very lucrative and stable market. So people will ideally want to fill that market up first. So yes, we should be thinking around those issues. And remember that Qatar and the Middle East produce a fifth of the global gas, LNG, across the globe. So yes, if we are seeing disruptions in that in that part of the globe, we do then expect to see that trickling through the markets as markets are trying to adjust, and as the bigger players are also adjusting their supply routes. So it is quite plausible that they would then also be looking elsewhere for their gas. And the smaller producers within OPEC will want to supply that big and steady market compared to our small regional market. So yeah, we are seeing a lot of an issue with that LNG type of production and the distribution thereon.
And I suppose the biggest concern that everyone watching this program this morning is the household impact with which, if we combine higher electricity tariffs, the rising fuel prices, and the potential gas increases. What does this mean for this average Liswati household who, over the next 3 to 6 months, who is listening to us this morning?
Yeah, it's quite a bitter pill to swallow, Mr. Ngumalo. We are still dealing with post-COVID effects. We're still expecting the markets to adjust to pre-pandemic levels, and then just before we could somehow say we are getting there, or at least wait for wages to catch up to that. So we are now faced with yet another supply shock. Which will inadvertently affect households in terms of, their cost of living. And we know that energy and heating are the main critical sources. That's where, households would always want to make sure that they have those. So we should start seeing a bit of a substitution in terms of households' expenses. And it actually does mean we are going to see costs staying higher for longer. And over and above, Ngumalo, as costs are staying higher for longer, the central banks are also changing their posture around monetary policy right now, given these geopolitical risks in terms of the trajectory going forward. I mean, we've seen the previous monetary policy committee meeting, the interest rate was held steady. Same thing in South Africa, the interest rate was held steady, even though inflation in both countries was it was now sitting on a comfortable range in terms of we could have seen an interest rate cut. So right now what households are going to be dealing with again is an interest rate that is higher for longer, making their debt servicing relatively higher. And at the same time, you'd have to deal with, expensive commodities. And it then becomes a story of have our incomes increased. So we should just brace for impact for the next, depending on how long the war starts, the war continues, and also on how long supply chains can actually adjust, depending on how long we can get that Venezuelan oil to flood the markets, how long do we allow Russian oil to stay in the markets, and then we'll see how the impact of that is balanced up. But it does affect the world's factory, Mr. Ngumalo, the Asian region, and now again, that means higher costs across the globe if Asia is going to be producing at higher costs.
Business and employment, energy is a major input for input cost for businesses rather. Are we likely to see this translate into slower hiring, into job losses, or even business closures, particularly in areas like manufacturing and agriculture?
Definitely, Mr. Ngumalo, that is one of the things that we are likely going to see, because what this environment means is businesses are going to have to play around with their cost structure, and playing around with the cost structure means also thinking around the labor that you are employing and how you are going to combine that labor with capital to give you a certain amount of output. So businesses will also try to play around with those costs, and because remember, it's not only going to be affecting the supply side, it's also going to be affecting the demand side. So businesses are also going to be trying to balance how do we ensure that we are not increasing prices too much such that it becomes a deterrent to consumers, while at the same time, how do we absorb the costs as businesses to make sure that we stay on a profitable range. So right now, those combinations would always require that either you shut down certain plants or you hire fewer people and make sure that you can still get some output there for the demand that will still be remaining. So yes, if this continues, we are going to see a bit of a slowdown in economic activity, and already we're waiting for the next, global GDP projections, and we do expect that there is going to be a downward revision given this war and the length, and if it continues longer, so we should see a more of a permanent impact in terms of global output. And yeah, Eswatini will not be spared from that.
To what extent can local policymakers actually cushion citizens from this kind of externally driven energy shock? Given that of course, we import most of our electricity as well as our fuel, and I know it is an ongoing conversation in Parliament.
Yeah, I think what this situation does for us, Mr. Ngumalo, is it imprints on us a the agency of a sense of agency around, delivering that strategic fuel reserves project on time. So by 2028, we need to have that strategic fuel reserve facility, and it should be on the ground and running. So it just gives to us the agency around which we were supposed to move in that front. And then also we are waiting to see if government is going to release yet another subsidy in terms of how do we support the sourcing and the producers going forward, so that whatever amount is being passed on to the consumer is not that high. So what we have control over in Eswatini is how much are we going to allow pass on to the consumer through the pump price? How much are we going to allow pass on to the consumer through the to the producer through the pump price as well, so that the logistics, the supply chain, and the production there isn't increased by as much as one would have expected if it allowed market forces to continue as it were. So we do expect government to dig into those strategic fuel purchasing reserves, because I think we do have such a fund as a country where we put aside some money to make sure that we can always use it when these shocks actually happen. We've always had that foresight. So we are waiting to see if that fund is going to be used, or if I'm missing it. Probably at some point we stopped having it. But regardless, we do need to have somewhat of a cushion, to cushion the economy in the next few weeks, because you can't expect consumers to absorb a 4 Malangeni increase as well. And same, you don't expect producers to absorb that for Malangeni. So if you allow that for Malangeni to go into the market, then you should expect a serious shrinkage in demand and a serious shrinkage in travel. Another thing that we can somewhat use Numalo to brace for, we're seeing other countries doing that. Japan is already cutting their work week from a 5-day to a 4-day week. Quite a number of countries are doing that just to make sure that we're able to survive this shock going forward. And if you see countries like Japan playing around with their work week, you should know that the problem is really big. So we do have those, that mix of policies that we can play with, in terms of we can allow people to work from home, or we could actually put out that subsidy out there.
I mean, both the tariff increase and this global crisis seem to point to one issue, which is dependence. How exposed are we as the kingdom because of its reliance on imported energy, and what would it realistically take to change that? Just realistically, what would it really take to change that?
You need a power plant. Simple. Botswana did it. They constructed one big thermal power station, and they got to energy independence in just 5 years. And I think those are the strategies that the kingdom already is taking. We're allowing, independent power producers to come into the grid. We are prospecting around thermal power station. We are looking at other, other alternatives to get the power to a level where we can, by 2030, have domestic power at a steady level. So that's what it would take, Mr. Ngumalo. It's just an issue of, are we going to deliver it on time? And our story right now, Ngumalo, is such that we need to deliver our infrastructure projects on time. We need to deliver growth on time. Otherwise, we would be having to deal with quite a lot of other problems. So I think we have a growth problem, and infrastructure is part of the panacea to that growth problem, and we need to deliver that on time. We need to deliver the energy input on time. We need to build the power plants on time and have them there by 2030.
To achieve that, what accountability measures should we put in place now that are at least different from the ones that were not stringently holding people accountable enough in previous projects?
I think for me, what is pivotal is the contract, Mr. Ngumalo. And I think the finance ministry has already worked around that issue, where we give you a contract to give you the money, we expect a program at the end of the day, and we sue you if you do not deliver that project. and you have to deliver it. We are not going to account for cost overruns that are unnecessary and all of those things. It's always been on the contract, making sure that the contractor delivers the project on time, while at the same time holding government accountable for not releasing those funds on time. So we just need that kind of punitive type of arrangement, and to also just ramp up the ESPRA type or the ESPRA regulatory framework and oversight in such matters.
Last question, short-term versus long-term response in terms of, the immediate term. What should our government and regulators prioritize to soften the blow immediately in the immediate term? And in the long term, what structural shifts are non-negotiable if we want to really avoid being this vulnerable? Again, and I suppose the answer there is the power plant in terms of the long term.
Yeah. So in the short term, what do we need to do, Mr. Ngumalo, just for a softer landing is to, number one, see if we can play around with the work quick. Number two, see if we have money in the government kitty to actually use as a subsidy. And it's a good thing that this problem comes through before we even go into a next financial year. So there is a bit of scope to rework the government, the budget that was tabled in February to see if we can't soften the blow. So in the short term, really, there is nothing much we can do except brace for impact and, and look for other sources of financing to cushion the blow. In the medium term, we need to diversify our markets and, both our exports and imports markets, and also diversify our local offering and grow. So we really do need to push that Buy Swazi campaign, because if we're buying a lot of domestically made products, then we would be in a way somehow cushioned, because what would then be importing is only that fuel price increase, but not the transportation component of it and the foreign production component of it. So it would be a bit lowered. And then long term, continue to diversify the economy and ensure energy sovereignty by 2030. Then going forward, Eswatini will have to be dealing with a new set of problems, not, there's a large vulnerability to external shocks.
Mr. Spear, thank you for your time. Sanila Spear, our economist, just chiming into the latest developments around energy tariff increases, as well as the implications with regards to the rising cost of living. We go for a quick break now. We'll be back with our news again.
Those that are in pain must forget all the problems they have. Because the things of the earth have got no answer. But the answer that we have is all morning. When I'm preaching here, I'm preaching to myself. I receive the Holy Spirit.
I declare that a turnaround is coming my way.
Turnaround is coming in my life.
Welcome back to International News Now. Russia launched over 270 drones at Ukraine overnight, killing at least 5 people, and Ukrainian authorities reported this very same story this weekend, and 2 people were killed and at least 11 more were injured in a nighttime Russian drone strike on Odessa, according to the head of region, Serhiy Lysak. According to Lysak's Telegram posts, the attack damaged a maternity hospital as well as private houses in the major Black Sea port city. Viewer discretion is advised on this story.
Residents of the southern Ukrainian city of Odessa awoke on Saturday morning to a city in ruins. More than 60 Russian drones swarmed the skies until the early hours of the morning, killing at least 2 people and injuring 11 others, including a 9-year-old boy. A maternity hospital was among the targets.
A powerful explosion occurred on the roof which destroyed it, collapsed the floor between the fourth and the third floors and destroyed the wards where the mothers and the newborns were staying.
High-rise buildings and homes in several districts were also struck, leaving windows shattered and balconies broken across the city.
We heard the air raid alert, but we were still half asleep. Then there was a loud blast, and a piece of debris landed right on my bed. My legs were shaking, my hands were shaking, everything was shaking.
It comes as part of a broader attack by the Kremlin, in which the central city of Kryvyi Rih and the frontline regions of Donetsk and Kherson were also targeted. President Zelensky has condemned the attack as an act of pure terror against civilians.
Each such strike proves that Russia has no intention of ending this war. That is why any easing of pressure on it is dangerous. And coordinated efforts to protect people and lives will help us help our country's defense and our diplomacy.
Zelensky arrived in the United Arab Emirates on Saturday to forge a security partnership with the Gulf state in which Ukraine will provide expertise in countering Iranian drones in exchange for material or financial support in its war against Russia.
Hundreds of mourners gathered at a cemetery south of Beirut on Sunday to attend the funeral of journalists Ali Shawib, Fatima Touni, and Mohammed Touni, who were all killed in an Israeli strike a day earlier. Israel has also acknowledged carrying out the attack, claiming that Shawib was affiliated with a militant group, but the incident has sparked widespread outrage within Lebanon, where officials have condemned it as a clear breach of international law. Viewer discretion is advised again.
Mourners were overcome with grief and anger as they bid farewell to 3 Lebanese journalists who were killed by the Israeli army.
The feeling of loss is painful, but we will not be broken.
The funeral on Sunday was held a day after the strike hit their vehicle in southern Lebanon. The target, according to Israeli Defense Forces, was Ali Shaib, a well-known war correspondent for the Hezbollah-affiliated Al-Mana television station. They accused him of being an operative for the militant group.
His role in the intelligence unit was to film intelligence information and transfer it to the Radwan force, all under the guise of a journalist.
Fatima Fatouni, seen here recording what would be her last live cross, and her brother and cameraman Mohammed Fatouni were also in the car. In a statement, the Committee to Protect Journalists said they were investigating the killings.
We have seen a disturbing pattern in this war and in the decades prior of Israel accusing journalists of being active combatants and terrorists without providing credible evidence. Journalists are not legitimate targets, regardless of the outlet they work for.
The grief was also felt by the broader community of journalists in Lebanon, who gathered in Beirut on Saturday night to mourn their colleagues.
These repeated Israeli crimes are no longer strange to us. Israel is now committing crimes without batting an eye. Today we've heard the enemy boasting about killing Ali Shaib and taking pride in it.
The attack has angered Lebanese authorities, who have called it a blatant crime and a violation of international treaties to protect journalists.
Israeli authorities said an Iranian missile attack killed a man in Tel Aviv on Friday as Tehran pressed its retaliatory strikes across the region a month into the war. Meanwhile, in southern Tehran, a pre-dawn Israeli strike hit a residential building, killing at least 5 children. Viewer discretion is advised.
Iranian missiles light up Israeli skies as sirens blared late Friday into Saturday morning. Emergency crews on the scene in Tel Aviv after what Israel says were cluster missile strikes, killing at least 1 person and hitting several sites.
So I want to emphasize to all the Israeli public and those that are here inside of Israel the absolute importance of going into protected shelters. These cluster missiles have one goal and one goal only: to maximize civilian casualties.
Projectiles also split mid-air over Jerusalem and streaked the skies of Hebron in southern occupied West Bank too. East of the capital, buildings and shops left damaged in the latest Iranian barrage. In southern Tehran, rescuers pulled bodies from the rubble Friday. A pre-dawn Israeli airstrike gutted a residential building, obliterating 2 floors and damaging neighbouring buildings. At least 5 children died.
Didn't they say, we won't attack civilian areas? Then why did they do this?
Israel says it also struck the Arak heavy water reactor, seen here in archive footage in the centre of the country. The military says it targeted the facility because it's essential to the production of nuclear weapons. 1 month into the US-Israel war in Iran, satellite before and after images show the toll of airstrikes across a changed city. Tehran's palaces, hospitals, schools, institutions, research facilities reduced to rubble.
8 dozen United States troops were wounded in an Iranian attack on Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, with 2 suffering serious injuries and 10 concussions, according to the United States media reports. The personnel were inside a building hit during the strike, which involved at least 1 missile and several drones. The attack also caused damage to multiple U.S. refueling aircraft, and that is according to the U.S. and Arab officials. Viewer discretion is advised on this story.
It's one of the key staging grounds for U.S. operations in the region, which makes the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia such an appealing target for the Iranians. According to U.S. media reports, around a dozen American soldiers were wounded, including 5 seriously, and several aerial refueling planes were hit in strikes carried out by Tehran. Iran broadcast what it claims are images of the operation on national television. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard said it carried out its 84th wave of retaliatory strikes using missiles and drones. In a statement, the IRGC claimed that its operatives destroyed a number of refuelers and the logistical fleet supporting the U.S. terrorist army at the Al-Kharj base. It's not the first time the Prince Sultan base has come under attack. In a previous incident on March 1st, a U.S. serviceman was wounded and later died from his injuries. Shortly after that, Iran managed to damage 5 refueling planes that were on the tarmac. A month into the war, the Iranian attack shows that the regime remains able to strike at the heart of American assets, despite the Trump administration's claims that it's annihilated Iran's ballistic missile capabilities. Meanwhile, American and Israeli forces are continuing their strikes. Iran's foreign minister has accused them of targeting civilian centers, including schools, hospitals, and residential areas. The University of Science and Technology in Tehran was also reportedly damaged. Nearly 1,500 Iranian civilians have been killed since the war began, according to a report by several human rights NGOs. On the American side, 13 soldiers have died since February 28th, and nearly 300 have been wounded.
Known as the Gate of Tears in Arabic, the Strait of Bab al-Mandeb is a narrow waterway at the southern tip of the Red Sea, connecting it with the Gulf of Aden in the Indian Ocean, a crucial passage that Iran has threatened to target if the U.S. forces launch a ground assault on its territory.
As the world watches the Strait of Hormuz, another critical shipping route could be in the crosshairs. The Bab al-Mandeb. Yemen's Houthi rebels warning they could block the strait, saying any attacks would target only vessels linked to countries they accuse of aggression against Iran and its allies. The Bab al-Mandeb connects the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. About 100 kilometres long and 30 kilometres wide, it separates Yemen on the Arabian Peninsula from the Horn of Africa. With the Red Sea a vital corridor between Europe and Asia, the strait is among the busiest shipping lanes in the world. Iran arms and backs the Houthis, who have already shown what disruption looks like. In late 2023, Houthi attacks on Red Sea vessels cut traffic dramatically, one of the most significant shocks to the global shipping in decades. Before those attacks, about 12% of global oil shipment moved through the Bab al-Mandeb, according to the US Energy Information Administration. By the first half of 2025, that volume had more than halved. and further escalation would deepen an energy supply crunch the world is adjusting to. The region is already one of the most militarized in the world. If tensions escalate further in the current US-Israeli war on Iran, American forces, including units potentially already en route, could be deployed to seize Iran's Karg Island. Washington already has around 50,000 troops in the region across nearly 20 bases. Iranian state media says that in the event of a US ground invasion, Tehran would target vessels transiting the Bab al-Mandeb. If this strait is drawn into the conflict, stakes go far beyond a narrow stretch of water, to the flow of global trade and the stability of energy markets worldwide.
Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen have carried out a second missile strike against Israel and have also pledged to continue their attacks in the coming days. Now, these assaults have heightened fears that the conflict could expand into the Red Sea region, where Saudi Arabia has already been redirecting a significant portion of its oil exports.
Firing a salvo of missiles at Israeli military sites, Houthi forces have opened a new front in the war. The Iran-backed rebels said they would continue their military offensive until aggression from all sides came to an end.
The Yemeni armed forces, with the help of Allah Almighty, have carried out the first military operation using a barrage of ballistic missiles targeting sensitive Israeli military sites in southern occupied Palestine. This operation coincided with the heroic operations carried out by the Mujahideen brothers in Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. By the grace of Allah Almighty, the operation successfully achieved its objectives.
The escalation raises fears of renewed attacks on the Red Sea, with all eyes now on the Bab el-Mandeb. This vital corridor off the coast of Yemen connects the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden and is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. Attacks on the strait would disrupt the global energy market even further, already impaired by Iran's effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz. At a Yemeni rally in solidarity with Iran, Lebanon and Palestine, some expressed their support for Houthi involvement in the war.
We stand with our brothers in Iran. We are not neutral. At any moment, when the time comes, we will intervene, if God wills that we'll intervene. And when we see blatant aggression against our country, we are ready.
The Houthis have already shown their capacity to disrupt global trade. In late 2023, the group launched attacks on international shipping vessels in the Red Sea in support of Palestine and the Israel-Hamas war.
Uncertainty still surrounds the potential deployment of United States ground forces, even as American reinforcements continue to arrive in the region. The amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli has now reached the area, carrying 3,500 Marines on board.
Edging closer to boots on the ground, the US Central Command confirmed Saturday on X that the USS Tripoli, usually based in Japan, has arrived in the Middle East. The amphibious assault ship is the flagship for a contingent of 3,500 Marines and sailors. Saturday, the Washington Post reported the Pentagon is preparing for weeks of ground operations, though Donald Trump is yet to approve the deployment. According to the report, ground operations would not constitute a full invasion force. Instead, special forces and amphibious assault troops would likely target strategic islands in the Persian Gulf, such as Karg Island, a key node in Iran's oil industry, seen by some as a potential way to pressure the Iranian regime. Though US officials have refused to be drawn on any plans for a ground invasion.
In terms of why there's deployments, number one, the president has to be prepared for multiple contingencies, which I'm not going to discuss in the media. And again, I refer you to the Department of War, who will probably tell you the exact same thing. But we can achieve all of our objectives without ground troops, but we are always going to be prepared to give the president maximum optionality and maximum opportunity to adjust to contingencies should they emerge.
US media reports say Trump is considering sending 1,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division to the region. They specialize in the ability to deploy and parachute into war zones at short notice. The Pentagon has not confirmed their deployment.
Iran and the United States have appeared at an impasse on Thursday, hardening their positions over ceasefire talks and setting the stage for more potential escalation in the Middle East war as thousands more United States troops neared the region. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump extended his deadline for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz to fight the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah.
Donald Trump says time is running out for Iran to make a deal. The US president talking tough at a cabinet meeting in Washington.
They are begging to make a deal, not me. They're begging to make a deal. They're saying to people, this is a disaster. They wouldn't talk otherwise, but they're talking to us because they've got a disaster on their hands. They're defeated. They can't make a comeback. We're free to roam over there.
Trump says he's confident an agreement can be reached, despite Tehran dismissing Washington's 15-point ceasefire plan. Instead, the regime sent a counter-proposal to end the fighting, which includes war reparations and mechanisms to ensure the conflict can't ignite again. All the while, Iran continues to deny negotiations with the US, but admits back channels through intermediaries have been used.
Messages being conveyed through friendly countries and us responding by stating our positions or issuing the necessary warnings is not called negotiation or dialogue. It is simply an exchange of messages through our friends.
Meanwhile, thousands more US troops are set to arrive in the region, and Trump's new deadline of April 6th looms. He maintains the US will strike Iran's power plants if the Strait of Hormuz isn't reopened.
Hundreds gathered in the Tel Aviv on Saturday to protest the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran, the latest in a series of weekly demonstrations since the conflict began a month ago. Participation now appears to be growing, prompting a tough response from Israeli authorities who moved to disperse the protesters.
Hema Square, the placards of these protesters share the same message: stop the war with Iran. Several hundred gathered in the center of Tel Aviv to protest the conflict on Saturday.
We are 4 weeks into the war, that nobody actually knows what is the aim of the war, because in the beginning they said we are against the missiles, against the nuclear, maybe to take down the regime in Iran, but after 2 weeks everybody understood that it's not going to happen.
These demonstrators hold Benjamin Netanyahu responsible for the war.
Obviously, I believe that this war is part of Bibi's game plan. I don't particularly fear the Iranians, and I think that he's led the world, or at least the Americans, into a very dangerous situation.
The Israeli authorities consider this demonstration illegal, as under wartime security guidelines, gatherings of more than 50 people are prohibited. Security forces dispersed protesters in Tel Aviv, sometimes forcefully. Authorities say 13 people were arrested. Although small protests have been held weekly across the country since the 28th of February, Israeli public opinion remains overwhelmingly in support of the war. According to the Israeli Democracy Institute, only 11% of the population opposes it. The protest organizers say demonstrations will continue in the coming days.
Cuba held a nationwide civilian military exercise on Friday involving weapons training and combat drills, and this is part of a broader push to expand militarization to youth under its War of the Entire People doctrine, which authorities describe as a collective patriotic duty. The drills came amid a deepening humanitarian crisis for the island as it faces chronic fuel shortages that is due to a U.S. oil blockade.
The sounds of gunfire echo around a sports field in Havana. Civilians and military personnel are taking part in training exercises linked to the island's Defense Day, drilling in rifle assembly and using gas masks. Local defense commanders present their plans up the chain of command.
Today, we completed the first stage here.
From this point, based on the observations and recommendations we received, our job is to go deeper into our plans, correct what was flagged, and keep preparing our leadership teams.
National Defence Days are a long-held part of the Communist island's security doctrine, designed to prepare state institutions and the wider population for everything from natural disasters to military invasion, and can take place several times a year. Friday's exercises were conducted under the shadow of threats from Donald Trump and an economic crisis that seems to deepen every week, something that isn't lost on local defence councils.
We are working to strengthen food production, short-cycle crops, and the restoration of the urban vegetable gardens in the area. We currently have 3 organic gardens being restored. Our agricultural strategy consists of allocating productive land to state entities, agencies, and private individuals who have requested it.
Plans that are unlikely to comfort residents struggling now. The fuel crisis has meant water pumps no longer work.
It's been more than 3 days since the water has come in, and I'm hauling water. You saw the buckets and the tanks there. I'm in a bad way. I don't know what I'm going to do anymore. I'm at my breaking point.
The search for water is now part of the daily routine for Cubans already suffering from blackouts and economic hardship, with no end in sight.
French police on Saturday stopped an apparent bomb attack outside a Bank of America branch in Paris. The French Counter-Terrorism Prosecutor's Office said it was investigating a terrorist criminal conspiracy.
5 litres of fuel, a supply of powder and a fuse to ignite it all. An incendiary device was placed in front of a branch of the Bank of America in Paris on a street not far from the Champs-Élysées. 2 men were in front of the bank around 3:30 a.m. early Saturday. One kept watch while the other placed the device in front of a building entrance. They attempted to light the fuse with a lighter. That was prevented, and one of the suspects was apprehended. His accomplice fled. He's 17 years old, lives in Montreuil on the Paris outskirts, and has a history of drug-related offences. He said he had been recruited via the Snapchat app and had received €600. Paris police had been on alert for the past week and were monitoring the area.
They were positioned at a reasonable distance to observe the entrance to the establishment discreetly in a car.
Police had been warned by a foreign intelligence service of a potential terrorist attack against the bank, though they didn't know the date. For experts, and in the context of the Middle East war, the modus operandi is reminiscent of methods used by Syrian intelligence services. A French security source is quoted as saying this case illustrates the threats highlighted by the GGSI, the General Directorate for Internal Security, since the start of the conflict, Iran's use of criminal intermediaries to target Israeli and American interests. France's Interior Minister thanked police, saying well done to the rapid response team whose actions thwarted a violent terrorist attack in Paris. An investigation into terrorist criminal conspiracy is now underway.
Facing soaring fuel prices from the Middle East conflict, the French government has announced €70 million in targeted aid for April, helping transport, fishing and agriculture. Measures include a 20-cent per litre fuel subsidy for small transport businesses and fishing boats, plus zero excise on agricultural diesel. The support is limited, sector-focused and adaptable, while broader tax cuts are rolled out to protect public finances.
For Cyril Taquet, the government's announcement offers little relief. Diesel will cost 20 cents less per litre from the 1st of April, but given how much it currently costs to fill up, the measure is totally insufficient.
A 20-cent reduction is nothing. Right now, it's our own cash flow that's keeping the vehicles running so that we can do our jobs. Eventually it will dry up and then we'll have to stop driving, and that will be that.
A 20-cent reduction has also been announced for the fishing sector. The price of diesel will drop to €1.10 per litre, but some fishermen are still hesitant to continue their work.
I'm carrying on for now, but I'm really on the verge of stopping.
It's this or nothing, so we'll take it.
The agricultural sector has also been hit hard by soaring prices, and farmers will now be exempt from certain taxes under the new measures. So far, no measures have been announced for individual motorists, some of whom wonder why they have not been included.
Ordinary people also have to drive to work when there's no bus or other public transport available, so I don't think it's very fair.
Others are more understanding.
Help would be nice, but I agree with prioritizing those who are working and those in need. I can wait a little longer.
The government's aid measures come at a cost of 70 million euros. They could be suspended at any point if the price of fuel drops.
Scientists trained in Finland to dive beneath Arctic ice, studying fragile polar ecosystems threatened by change. The course gives rare hands-on skills to explore underwater habitats robots cannot safely survey, as instructors warn of the urgent need for more research to protect these vanishing environments.
To discover the ocean's secrets, you have to dive deep. Researchers from the conservation organization Under the Pole are exploring a transitional area in the Arctic's icy waters. Thanks to deep diving rebreathers, they can travel up to 130 meters deep to discover the little studied but highly important mesophotic zone.
Understanding how these ecosystems function, their connectivity with shallow water ecosystems, and their specific diversity is really important in order to establish marine protected areas or conservation zones that are suited to the unique nature of these ecosystems.
Particularly vulnerable are krill. The tiny crustaceans sustain Antarctica's fragile ecosystem as the base of the food chain. However, they face increasing threats from industrial fishing, which uses krill for pet food and dietary supplements. Without establishing official protections, the researchers warn that the Southern Ocean is in danger.
We're on the verge of a catastrophe. This is a time to put strong protection measures in place. That doesn't mean banning everything. It means removing the intense pressure in areas where animals depend on krill to survive.
One researcher framed protocols for the ocean as being part of a larger puzzle. In learning more about the in-between ecosystems, they're trying to fill in the missing pieces.
Only biological women will be allowed to compete at the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics following a landmark decision by the International Olympic Committee banning transgender women and those with differences in sexual development. IOC President Kirsty Coventry said the policy was led by medical experts. The IOC used gene testing in the 1980s, but it was abolished in the 1990s. The policy change comes after years of controversy over the participation of transgender and DSD athletes in women's competition.
After years of controversy and intense debate over how sports should balance fairness with inclusion, International Olympic Committee President Kirsty Coventry has made a landmark decision just 1 year into her leadership. At the 2028 Los Angeles Olympic Games, only biological women will be able to compete in the female category.
At the Olympic Games, even the smallest margins can be the difference between victory and defeat. So it's absolutely clear that it would not be fair for biological males to compete in the female category.
The IOC policy will ban transgender women and those with differences in sexual development from competing in all Olympic disciplines. It says that eligibility will be determined by a once-in-a-lifetime sex test to detect the SRY gene, which causes male characteristics to develop. Until now, the IOC left such regulations to governing bodies of individual sports rather than applying a universal approach. Caster Semenya, a DSD athlete declared female at birth, but with male chromosomes and testosterone levels, won gold in the women's 800 meters at the 2012 and 2016 Olympics. She has not competed since refusing to reduce her testosterone levels after World Athletics introduced tighter rules in 2019. At Tokyo 2020, weightlifter Laurel Hubbard became the first openly transgender woman to compete at an Olympics. A blanket ban on such athletes has been praised by some campaign groups, but has caused anger among others.
It's not science-based, it's stigma-based. It's more, I think, under political pressure.
It could see battles from effective athletes at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Though in an IOC survey of more than 1,000 athletes and former Olympians, the majority of women were in favour of the change.
All right, after the break, we speak to Patizo Msibi, our sports journalist, about his award as well as the Easter fixtures. Stay with us.
After years of controversy and intense...
To all the viewers of Eswatini TV in the kingdom and beyond. Eswatini TV is regulated by the Eswatini Communications Commission through the Broadcasting Code and Broadcasting Guidelines. Under these instruments, the station commits to broadcasting information and news that have been fact-checked, programs and content in respectful language with no elements of hate speech, violence or sexual activity. If you hear any unsuitable content on this channel, you have a right to voice your complaints with the station management. Should you not be satisfied with the response or action taken, you can escalate your matter to the Communications Commission at PO Box 7811 Babani. Call 2406 7000 or send an email to info@escom.org.za. For more information, visit www.escom.org.za.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze. Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokusemini.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds, full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Siphinze sinamukela ehlelweni sitawuvala ihlelo lethu ngekuxoxisana ne-award winning journalist yethu Patizo Msibi lowine video of the year lowine lohlabene kuma-National Sports Awards la chubekeke kule viki leliphelile ngalesine the 26th of March. What an exciting time for him, but also for a proudful moment for Eswatini TV and the work that it does. And certainly the other people that won kulawo ma-awards lawo nabo-ke siyababongela kakhulu. Siyafuna ke nekuchubeka siteke indzaba yebhola lapha ekhaya eSwatini. Takhumbula ukuthi kusasa sihlangisa Mnikade sitawudlala i-second leg ne-Eritrea. They are down 2-0 having lost an away game, and there are incentives in place. We even saw naku paper run yethu this morning ukuthi bathi kunema incentives nangabe batawina September ukuthi batawuvele bende njalo. Local coaches are backing them up and they are saying that they can emerge victorious. Also the weekend the Easter fixtures are out. That is the Premier League of Eswatini, and they will start on Saturday the 4th of April, opening with Ubombo Sugar FC versus Amawele FC. And then they will continue with a host of other games. All of those games we discuss with Patizwe Msibi. Patizwe, Kusile Mkadlela, cala nje asikubongele kakhulu. What a beautiful award. I see you came with it in studio. Utaslaela nje, that's your baby now. But maybe to set the stage, just take us through, the night, what was being celebrated. Just give us a brief background before we get into your particular award.
Angivusela Mkadlela, ngivusela kubo babukela emakhaya. Ngalo Thursday sifisa bekulanga lebetemidlalo. All sports in the country la khona bekuhlonyeliswa ke kuthiwa ke Mula Sports National Sports Awards lebekasekelwa Mula Sports kokucala since abe khona nyalo bekuyi-6th edition seloko aqala sifisa kuye ngilapho nje ku celebrate khona ama-achievements alabo labadlali bahlabana kuleyo ma-fields laba kuwo. It was a beautiful night. Sifisa belapha ka-Look Commission ku-auditorium yakhona. The minister wema-sports bekakhona lapha nalamanye ama-officials ahulumende bekakhona. So overall, even from the pictures, it was a beautiful night. It ran well. People came out. Even the way
Minister, as you said.
Minister na sponsor from Mula Sports and I think the biggest episode or the biggest time kona lapho kwabangisa sekonarisha Letitia for what she has done kanye na Naomi DuPont for what there's time, but it doesn't get better than this.
It doesn't get better than this? You mean the visuals, or what do you mean when you say it doesn't get better than this? But
I mean for the no. I mean for the awards. You mean the bigger stage for every.
Okay, yeah. Fantastic. Maybe that honor for Letitia. Let's speak on it briefly. Siyathi lo ukuthi Letitia solo ukhombisa brilliance yakhe. Of course, not only being an ambassador for local football in Eswatini, but even on the global stage now, especially with the technologies that are being introduced in football. And ngathi ulihlahlandlela naye lapho and just khombisa ukuthi yakhona kuyibamba.
I think Letitia was smart. Was magabona ukuthi kuba ngu center ref. Say so closer to retirement. Wabuke ma opportunities. Kuthi okay sengecetha ku officiator la khathe grounding. What can I do? Lucky for her. Kwaba na VAR lo introduce ku Kosafa. And she took that opportunity and what magayibamba wabambisisa. And I think it worked for her nalokuthi ungmage. Because vele kwakhona lokhu bebabancane boRafaela laba bomake labajaja
because the drive for inclusivity now.
Yes.
Hanjiswa embili.
So wakhona ngicanje nje wathi position kahle wathola opportunity wabambelela and she's doing a very good job. Masobuka ukuthi the kind of games lesebaqale kumnika wona. If bamnika ama finals AFCON yabo babe, it means ukuthi khona la kwenda right. So the country lina tonke tisathu ukuthi tichenye ngaye tijabule ngaye and sike sabona nje mafikini etinyangeni letiphelile kuba nema controversies around kuhamba kwakhe kongenisa lemidlalo ukuthi ministry ngathi abamvumele ministry kuba nani but seeing the minister lapha kuba nguye lo honorishako it says government yamsupporta. So if government yamsupporta kutshengisa ukuthi every liswati leliphumako li outside liyomelela live hulumende uthi alisupporta la kumele alisupporte khona.
And congratulations on your award, Patizwe, of course, Walapa Ekaya. And we're just happy, because the sports department continues to excel in a lot of awards. We know that when there's an award event in Eswatini, certainly our own, sports house is winning something. Here are your photos. Just take us through all these moments and maybe start by telling us what award you won.
It's outstanding sports journalist of the year, electronic. Yes. It was, for me, it was a bit of it was very emotional, right? I'm saying this because I got my first nomination for this award, Magabuya Kokuqala. That was, I think, 2019, if I'm not mistaken, or 2018. But Magabuya was the first edition since, because we were nesikhathi la kude khona ma national awards. Akaba khona, but asanyamalala for years.
So 7 years ago, I figure 7 years ago, you mean?
Sekunana inakuza lengibalisa kabi ya COVID, because kwaba na COVID kwaba bit. Yeah. So from the first edition, hence I'm mentioning it around the editions, not the years.
Not the years.
From the first editions, I got nominated. Then it was blank up until now. La sengcine sengiwina khona. So it's been a journey.
Yeah.
So I say this the other time when I was doing an interview with say, we don't work for awards, but it's nice being recognized for lo msebenzi lo wendako.
Yeah.
The priority is just doing a job.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wakes up at the winning award. You guys work because you have passion for this thing, and certainly the passion then separates you from everyone else. But certainly your fuel, I mean your passion, iyaba fueled. I would say ungabi honored nakakhona lama first edition, and like you said, your first nomination was there.
Yeah.
Years later, you finally bag it.
Yeah. So even after, I continued doing the job, and eventually the right people, but I noticed it's okay. Just kind of went down.
Yeah.
I went down, but still we are seven with the same passion, with the same drive. So I'm finally it came here, and I'm happy for it. I'm excited, So yeah.
Who are you thanking? I mean, Patiso, because obviously we know that Maulapa Paralama scripts, a lot of it is coming from your head, from your you observing Lemidlalo. But you certainly work with other people.
Yeah.
We can even go as far as Ekaya, where people that support you everywhere.
I think it has to be God first, family, because Swiso gunema early mornings. Marathons, cycling events, you have to wake up ngabo 4.
Marathon
Ifusa lokwa. Manenge cishe nje onke ama marathon vele asifuse kuseni. Kunebamfulo bashendlini. Kunebamfulo bashendlini sifisa uhambe uyosebenza lo bavusaka ekuseni ukuthi ngisaya emsebenzini bakubambise. Start there sifisa.
Yeah.
Family.
Sure.
And then la msebenzini we got structures sifisa. I'm talking about the award. When I was in Eswatini TV, I'm not in isolation. I'm not an independent journalist or anything. So the platform, the TV, it has to be appreciated.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate it so much. Looks the platform, and then there are the people you work with every day. Bo Master, Bo Fabrice, Bo Tari, Bo Bong. It goes down to as far as boat drivers. So the 7 and Abola M17.
Yeah.
So that's Mautis Jagale Gupi. I'm making sure it's in figure and paper because anything can happen in Katim. So it's not just an award, parties, but it's an award le appreciator. Even it putting the stage. Platform okay, Eswatini TV there is something happening. If kunema staff sabola baba recognize ngale hlobo lo shots khona laba kwendako. Ngicabanga ukuthi if you're working for an organization like this, you can never win an award and claim it to be just yours.
Absolutely, and I think I watched a few of your other interviews with other media post the awards, and you didn't stutter in praising His Majesty the King, and of course, the role that he plays in supporting local sports, and also wishing him 40 years on the throne in that process. And I also want you to speak to that briefly.
So, I know bongeko, but 40 years since His Majesty took reigns, up until now, look at the developments like on us face. And I do think that Aska Saleli move on as my journalist. Nati we are riding along konke logo. So ngekuhlala leadership because I think it goes down to the kind of leadership you have go excel in whatever you do. We've had opportunities to even go cover events outside the country. That's a platform, my relations like we live. Because it's going to campus, not been thinking at the campus. So it is a big deal. So it's a big thing, and we praise His Majesty's for this opportunities lese basifetele wona sifiso sokungaba nje kusho ukuthi lokuhle kodwana kuyimbangazitha kusaqhubeka and may he reign longer.
Yeah, for sure. Patizwe, sports, without a doubt, media idlala indima lenkulu in the growth of sports.
Yeah.
You guys even have nicknames now from, lama fans lawa. Ngibonile nje bakufaka ama hashtag lapha ngiyamanga lawo sokumele igama leliso la Patizwe sengikhohle ukuthi ngabe lisistaladi kambe noma lisini.
Staladi nglomunye.
Yeah, but there's a ligama labakubita ngalo. But all I'm saying is the role of sports, of media in growing sports in Eswatini imqoka kangakanani nidlala kanjani?
Inkulu Swiso, but ke le responsibility lesinayo kumele ukuthi sibambe Swiso. I must say this, man. We have a responsibility yoku inform abantu, yoku promote a growth kule sports. But we also have the responsibility yoku disseminate the right information.
Yes.
Without being seen as uthi sesinema agenda against who and against what.
Kuthi nje wena ungafike lana ukhulume ngathi song PRO weSwallows ngiyabekisa kungathi khwala bakupheko nekhikhini engcenye.
Yes.
You always have to be impartial.
Ongifike ngingakhulumi kahle ngeteam just because kunjani njani.
Yeah.
If whatever I'm saying is backed up by facts, yeah, it's your job as a journalist to do, but we have the responsibility to follow my ethics. I'm saying this because there has been a lot of complaints, more especially because of this new age media, where lapho khona nawe sifisa ungavuka namuhla well ngibekisa kabi ngawe, but anyone else can come up akusena vuke akhe page lakhe akhe the account athi so media house and so journalist with awungalandzeli ngisho linye ema ethics. I think so. I also serve as the interim president for Emma Sports Journalist Association, right? Angathi ngithole ngakhe ama complaints of ema post ema pictures la ngase appropriate la sevela aflariwe kuma socials, because once I lemfo ayifaka kuma socials noma delete wena sevela hambile.
Yes,
it will never leave. Exactly.
Yeah.
You can never permanently delete anything from online kuthi sekhambe sonke. So kungaba nje kucela Donald Ntatheli ukuthi or whoever is disseminating information ukuthi manje sizame ikakhulu mase ufika to an extent yokwakha page uthi so I media house what ukuthi le responsibility ikithi ukuthi sibe ethical, ukuthi sihambise leyo information without kubonakala ngazuthi sesithethe ama side or sesihambisa a narrative lethit. Kungaba nje kucela lokho ukuthi sisenda lo msebenzi siwende ngeqiniso ikakhulu nala kuma sports, because ama sports asisho sangakhulunywa iqiniso, because there are a lot of wrong things happening. There are a lot of things lenta ukuthi uthi uhlele nawe uyintathele ubone ukuthi yati I'm not doing enough to address this issue. We need something to be done. Just like kudliwa kwesihlangu, which is hurtful to some certain extent. And
and I'm happy you mentioned kudliwa kwesihlangu because sidliwa sihlangu. Besihambile sasiyodlala ne-Eritrea first leg yabo. The second leg is tomorrow. It's important that we talk about it. Coaches, local coaches are backing them up. I saw the headline this morning. I wonder which Banka Club of Coach Labo and if they represent the full body of coaches, but they are backing them up. Peter Samoras Melane would say there's incentives. Speak to me about the possibility of Sihlangu winning and qualifying.
Ikona Swiss. We'll be playing home. I think this will be our second game playing home since Besolos Valley. And in Temba, we have internationals nyalo ladlalago. So let me just say this. Eritrea, headlines they are unranked because we were active for the longest of time. It's only now that they just came playing.
Sure.
But what they've done, what they've done, they're not depending on players Eritrea. They went to Europe. They scouted Europe babuwa ukuthi khona yini ingosi yami munye nje lesingamthola lone ma roots nje labuya eRich babathola. I think more than 90% of the squad lesidlalako the first 11 kude odlala
Do you know of any Swazis or Maswati who have Swati roots who are playing in Europe?
Yeah, kude odlala ku highest level.
Yeah.
Lengumatiko, but there is one Kaya Dlamini who plays in England. He has been with Emma Academies, top academies in England. Well, he's still young. I think he should be 17 this year. So maybe the country should be looking at him, because kule squad lesi nje sa Richard enkhuluma ngaso, there is one player lo ku academy ya Sheffield under 18 bambitile, part of the squad. So I think maybe because sifiso mabuka liqiniso lithi ne development we are lacking kakhulu. Even if singathi kunema trainings, kunema juniors, kunema banibani, it doesn't qualify as the academy, and it doesn't really give the kids the amount of time they need practicing maba sakhula. So we are lacking in that aspect, and it doesn't seem promising ukuthi yinfo lengalungiseka nyalo nyalo. So maybe we should take that route, or rather we identify these kids laba bathola kubo Build It, kubo Pick and Pay tournaments, la tournament, identify those kids uhambo bamikise kuma academy la international, ufana ubabhatalele, spend the money there, ubhatalele bona, and try ukuthi bakhule, and then you'll benefit from that years later. Ungasabuki vele, it's a long-term project to develop umdlali Sifiso and actually get something, because I'm reminded of Djibouti. Sashaya some years back, I think about 6 ban. Years later, yabuya yasidla le. I think yasidla one not. Yabuya la mavuso. Yaphela igame ka-0-0. Igame yonke balala phasi bangadlali. Kuthi ngema yaphela. And even swaphela. So iyarisha mayitale game lena, they have every reason to just slow down the game. It's 2-0, and we need to score early goals. Yadlala game kusasa nga-4 Sifiso 30 rand eketen, which I think, looking at ukuthi idlala midweek and the team hasn't been performing very well, there was no need for the 30 rand.
How much was it supposed to be, Fatizwe?
For free.
It's a national team, Fatizwe.
It's a national team. You need the country to come back, the team, because it's not like you win.
Other fans in other countries say we will spend whatever for our national team. But you are saying it's based on our performance.
The confidence is low.
Therefore, even a poor person should afford to watch this
Everyone
game.
should, just for the sake of it, support ngifake 30 rand odliwa, because siyadliwa. But angathi Sifiso, but ngiva ngazuthi if it was for free, anyone, because nyalo Sifiso khumbula ukuthi ngithe it's midweek. So bamfla banemali basemsebenzini labasebenzayo.
Okay.
Bantu basemsebenzini.
Fair.
Yabo.
Fair, I see
So
it.
lo mflu ongakhona ka-afford ukuyothenga tickets ahamba ubukela usemsebenzini. So la emakhaya kuhleli laba kunalaba bangasebenzi, but bebangakhona kuhamba bayongena bafike babukele basupport i-national team yabo.
All the best to Sihlang Semnigati as they play Eritrea. Make us proud, boys. Even saying that, I don't believe you can make us proud, Sihlang Semnigati, but please prove me wrong. We are backing you guys up, but we certainly need you to win, especially ngoba si idlala ekhaya, and we want to qualify.
Yeah, we need to win at least 3-0.
3-0.
And I think we can, playing at home, lapha Samhlolo. If Figueiredo will replicate what he did against the Angola, I think we can get something.
We are hoping for that result as Patizwe expounds on that. And Patizwe program number 22 for the Premier League of Eswatini has been released, and a full slate of important games that we'll enjoy from the 4th of April, which is this coming Saturday at Mayaluka Stadium. Beginning will be Ubombo Sugar FC versus Amawele FC. For you, what is the standout game in this fixture?
It's Monene Pirates versus Singizini.
Why is that?
Well, both teams are doing well. Singizini, as we know, they are top of the Premier League. And Monene, until I think it was defeated by Isipet League, Beba win 5 games in a row. So the confidence should be still high. I do think it's going to be a very interesting fixture, le Monene Pirates, because Logunya Foot, Bong 2, badlala proper football. There are teams lo Tmawa Bugela ube happy. So I'm picking it up as the game to watch.
Highlanders versus Eswatini United, is it a game that we want to...
It is, looking at ukuthi Eswatini nayo phela team lehluphako, ikakhulu mayidlala nama-team lamakhulu nje nayo iyahlupha. Ngilenye nje igame le, I think uMavuso on Saturday kutaba i-double header, qala tawuba nalo 2 games loyo lo tawube udlala. Those are proper games. And lenye le ngadraw i-attention ngaba nginayi Real Leopard nayo imanzini sibets.
I was looking at the log standings and ngibone Real Leopard on the first top table there.
Iphasi Real Leopard is
unbelievable.
And imanzini sibets ilapha number 2.
I can see Sibets at number 2.
Yeah.
But Real Leopard ayibonakala top 8. quite sad.
Sippets can beat Israel Party Kimlen.
Sippets will beat Israel Party.
Yeah. Makula kula possibilities of kwendeke lokho. Ngendlela ledlala ngayo Sippets, they are very aggressive in a beautiful way.
Interesting. I mean, of course, we also do see Malandi Chiefs versus Mbabane Swallows.
Kilani.
That's a game where, I mean, obviously, with the issues that happened with Swallows towards the end of last year and certainly beginning of this year, those issues were still like one of our conversations now. Are they finally showing what's this about
Not really. I can't say that for now. Kumbura, the last game they were embarrassed by Young Buffaloes. It doesn't look good.
Structurally, though, not let's forget.
Well, structurally, they've been consistent. So the past few games, good administratively.
Yeah.
Good so good see they failed to prepare for the season because of Lomsin. So they couldn't really do anything about it. It's just a matter of the season.
21 matches played in Eswatini Hotspurs at the top of the logs.
Yeah, can I just say this quickly before I'm not sure if Kemi Manzini Wanderers ne Tabangulo Celtic will go ahead this weekend because of Melagubene funeral their captain. So I'm seeing the picture right now.
Yet from
yeah, but there's still time for it to be amended because they can amend it today.
Would it be wrong if the game continued, just ethically?
Yeah, I feel like it will be wrong, because the squad will be at the funeral.
So we wait to see the moral compass of this team as we await their communique. But Patizo MCB, award-winning journalist, sitting next to me, congratulations to him and all the winners that won. You have been watching Kusile Breakfast Show, the Monday edition. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. Salegal.
Mswatu inkosi thula akayithathe akahambe nayo akayithathe yotenza kade ngone akayithathe
the day you take Christ into your life, you begin to walk in a blessing.
Emaswati master ushiya simakazi sibukela abanye bonkulunkulu uNkulunkulu tawukhwesha kithi emaswati singamlahli uNkulunkulu
sitomdumisa sisho sithi uyigwele